Hey, und Konnichiwa, hier ist wieder euer Keanu zurück mit Let's Play Corpse Party Blood Drive und wir machen da weiter, wo wir beim letzten Mal aufgehört haben und ich habe da Numerous Brooks, okay. Ja, die sieht ganz hübsch aus. Wir haben hier ein Messer liegen. Messer in Horrorspielen sind nie was Gutes, oder? Die will sich doch jetzt nicht ernsthaft den Bauch aufschneiden. In front of the mirror dresser sat Hino's zodiac dagger. I gripped it in terror, closed my eyes, and started shaking.
何としてもブックオブシャドウズを体の外に出して支配なさい。黒魔術から生まれたその本は残酷と血を好むわ。
I couldn't back down now. I lifted the dagger in front of me, poised to plunge it into my body and carve myself open as samurai once did in the ritualistic suicide called seppuku. But I couldn't go through with it. I was too scared of death, too scared of the pain. The face that reflected back at me in the mirror was twisted with fear. I didn't even recognize myself. But I could see in those eyes all the weight that had been put on my shoulders, all the responsibility I'd been forced to bear.
臆病で矮小で弱くてこんな自分さえいなければここで決別するのよ。
My mind was made up. I lifted the dagger again, only to bring it halfway to its destination before halting its descent once more. No matter how determined I was, no matter how strong my conviction, this was literally suicide. I knew what had to be done, but knowing and accepting are two different things. I began crying like a baby. This was the most afraid I'd ever been in my entire life. It's almost certainly the most afraid I ever would be. At this point, the only way I'd be able to go through with it was to clear my mind and let my arms make the motions automatically, and before I knew it, that's exactly what I did. It's most likely because I wasn't thinking about it, or anything else for that matter, that the dagger found absolutely no resistance. It was like applying excess force to slice a cake. For a very brief moment I felt nothing. But then the convulsion started, first in my abdomen, then quickly spreading up to the rest of my body. Was hast du nicht gefunden, Gitterbro? My abdomen was now spasming and constricting involuntarily, and the rest of me wasn't faring much better. My entire body was in total chaos. The extent of the agony I had felt at that moment was absolutely impossible to convey. It was all-encompassing. I was utterly incapable of focusing on anything else. My lower body was spewing bright red blood, thick black blood, and an unknown yellow substance, all of which were blending together into a slurry that was, at its core, my life essence. Ich hab doch einen Link hier zu der Schule geschickt, Gator Bro. Warum suchst du denn noch weiter? This went far beyond anything I could have ever imagined. The sheer shock of it rendered my mind a jumble that I simply could not entangle. I knew there was a reason I'd done this to myself, something I absolutely had to do, and it was crucial, but regaining enough cognitive function to do it would be a challenge. My head was swimming as I tried beyond all reasonable measure to hang on to consciousness just long enough to complete the task at hand. Du hast einiges verpasst, Rhodey. Und das können dir die anderen gerne erzählen. Wie geht's dir so? Wie war dein Tag? I could still see my face in the mirror, but only just, as the blood that had been spurting from my abdomen had largely glazed it over. It was a truly frightful sight, comparable to, if not more disturbing than anything I'd seen in Heavenly Host. I felt feeble, helpless, and the face in the mirror was smiling at me for it, darkly, obscenely. Jet black crows flew by outside the window, and in that moment a fire sparked within me. Feeling oddly resolute, I gripped the dagger jutting out from my abdomen. And yanked into the side with every last bit of strength I had left in me. Sie hat sich selbst den Magen richtig aufgeschlitzt, ey. The spray of blood gushing out of me became almost exponentially more violent. Most surprisingly, it seemed like equal amounts of blood were rushing to my brain as well, and the effect was a feeling like the blood vessels in my head were on the verge of bursting. But just as I felt like I was moments from my final blackout, I saw something. There, among my own entrails on the ground, was a blood-drenched tome. It was the Book of Shadows, without a question. My vision blurred from the intense loss of blood and even more intense pain. I fell forward, unable to maintain any semblance of balance any longer. And I landed right on it, with a loud, warm, and unpleasant splash. My face planted firmly into the book, which was steaming under the odd temperature differentials of my viscera. Das Blut ist auf einmal weg. I awoke with a start. I was still in Hinua's room. Instinctively and frantically I looked down at my abdomen. There, I saw a scar resembling the ones I had almost died from during the blowback at Yoshinozaki's house, runic lettering and all. But that was it. The bleeding had stopped. In fact, there was no blood anywhere in the room, and on the floor in front of me sat the Book of Shadows. Not a copy, but the original. I slowly touched it, and from behind me Sachiko spoke. She was staring at me with a docile, almost reverent look in her eyes. I picked up the book and looked at it, fear and awe running through my now clear head. It grumbled a bit, darting its eyes back and forth. Eventually, it seemed to settle on a specific direction, looking at its gaze. Boah, ich kann kein Deutsch mehr, Englisch. It seemed to be looking out the window. Ich habe immer mehr Lust, mir die Corpse Party Blood Dive Special Edition zu holen. Weil da ist nämlich das Book of Shadows dabei. Als so eine Art Artbook. Finde ich so geil, hätte ich so gerne. Ah. Dad and Mom both just repeat the same line over and over again, like a broken tape recorder. Leider gibt's die Version bei Amazon gerade nicht. Da gibt's zwar eine Ever After Version zu kaufen, aber da bin ich mir nicht sicher, ob da tatsächlich das Buch dabei ist. Wenn, dann würde ich mir das so gerne holen, ey. What? Was war das? Es gibt einmal eine OAV, die Vorgeschichte zu Repeated 4 erzählt und dann einmal ein Anime, der die Geschichte zu Repeated 4 erzählt, aber nicht zu Blood Drive. Sachiko looked at me with sweet, innocent eyes. When I arrived at Kisaragi Academy, I got a much better look at the phenomenon. It was like a whirlpool with a red, dully shining hole in its center. Was this the entrance to the after? Gita Bro, ich stimme dir da sogar zu. Ich fand das auch ein bisschen unnötig jetzt. Das könnte es auch sein, Dodo. I closed my eyes, clasped the Book of Shadows tightly in both hands, and prayed. When I opened my eyes again and looked up into the sky, my body began to float. I was in control of the Book of Shadows. I was legitimate practitioner of magic now. This moment felt almost like an awakening to endless new possibilities.
これ本当に飛んでる。
And right next to me, flying by my side, was Sachiko. The momentary loss of focus dropped me out of my trance, and I immediately began falling. I gripped the book even tighter and concentrated harder than before, and sure enough, I began rising up toward my vortex once more.
あゆみ、気をつけて。あなたが力を使えるのはその本のおかげ。絶対離しちゃダメ。わかったわ。
As I flew higher, I could see Magari sitting on the roof of the school.
ブックオブシャドウズを従えたようね。見直したわ、篠崎あゆみ。
Ob wir jetzt auch irgendwelche Special Powers bekommen haben durch das Book of Shadows?
それにしても、如月学園の真上に涅槃へのエスカレーターがあるなんてね。ついでにもう一つ教えてやるとね、涅槃がこの世界に侵食してつながってしまったのは、涅槃天神症がこの世に発生してしまった時点で、いいえ、もっと以前にブックオブシャドウズが生み出されてしまった時に、いつかこの時が来ることは決まっていた。
I looked into Magari's face. She was being completely sincere. Dann ist also die Erschaffung vom Book of Shadows der richtige Auslöser gewesen, dass jetzt die Welt also zerstört wird.
その本の元の所有者も篠崎義恵もみんなそれを食い止めようと、あるいは遅らせようと必死だったの。それが次世代へつなぐだけの運命であってもね。そうやって代々受け継いできたのよ。そうだったの。だから言ってみれば、あなたがいようといまいといずれこうなったわ。ただあなたの行為はあの狂信者集団ヤゴウラ教会の生き残りミストに涅槃のパワーを与えてしまった。その責任は取らなきゃいけないわ。責任。あなたには本物のブックオブシャドウズがある。天神症で分散していた涅槃の力はミストの持つ偽物に取り込まれてしまった。でもそれを取り戻してその本に封印すれば、あんなもの簡単に吹っ飛ばせるわ。そして涅槃のコアをも迎え入れられたなら、その本は完璧なものとなる。さあ反撃よ。食らわしてやりなさい。世界が終わる前に一発ぐらい本物の実力ってやつをね。
Magari grew smaller as I climbed higher and higher, and as I looked up, I could see the free sword looming ever larger, poised ever to wrap itself around me.
怖い？死ぬの怖い？怖いかな。
I smiled at her, and to my surprise, it was a genuine smile. Somehow or another, I was feeling very calm. Sachiko looked at me with wide eyes.
どうしたの？
She turned away briefly, then looked over at me once more. It almost seemed like in that brief moment she changed expression in much the way someone would change a suit.
怖いのはサチと涅槃のコアにいる人。気をつけて。涅槃のコアにいる人？それはミストじゃなくて？うん、別にいる。
Und nicht noch ein Verrückter oder eine Verrückte, keine Ahnung. I looked back up. I looked back up to find myself practically right on top of the hole in the sky that stood in front of the abnormally huge red moon. And with my convictions settled, I jumped in. The harsh flash, the nausea, and the wrenching tightness in my chest caused me to lose consciousness for a second. But then I awoke to find that heaven and earth had switched places. It looked as though I were falling headfirst into a massive storm, with flashing lightning and roaring thunder. It almost seemed like I was previewing what the world would look like after its destruction. Vielleicht, ja, jedem das seine, ne? In the sky, there was an enormous face of a doll, and the walls around me were all made of flesh. Ich frag mich wirklich, wie die Heavenly Host jetzt aussieht. Nach der Zerstörung. In Anführungszeichen. I clenched the Book of Shadows with both hands as I slowly made my landline in this new version of the Nirvana. It was a mountain of rubble. Bums. Ich habe voll vergessen, dass ich... Na, egal. I slowly, carefully found my footing and pulled myself back up to my feet. Fast vergessen, das vorzulesen, ey. This was an entirely different heavenly host. It bore almost no resemblance whatsoever to any version of the school we traversed previously. I called out to my friends, but received no answer. All I could hear was the rumbling and twisting of the air around me. What? A name tag reads beside the corpse. Kazuki Mudakata, crushed by a piece of the school. There was no mistake in it. In the midst of the wreckage, pieces of clothing from Kishinuma, Mochida, Nakashima, Miss Kyon, and Eiko were clearly visible. And the unfortunate souls who were wearing this clothing were all buried under fallen beams and other debris, and surrounded by a veritable sea of blood. I kneeled down and began sobbing uncontrollably. Sachiko stared at me as I continued to scream and cry. Sachiko produced a Cavalera necklace from her pocket. The skeletal figure on the chain made a slight, hollow, clinging sound as it was handled, very much like actual bone wood. It looked handmade and seemed oddly warm, like a keepsake. I had this weird feeling that I'd seen this object somewhere before. Though she was looking down at the ground a bit, slightly guilty and slightly guarded, Sachiko giggled slightly. A big smile creeped across her lips, and for a moment she looked every bit the part of an ordinary little girl. I was confused. Sachiko placed her hand on the Book of Shadows. And the book spoke, followed by Sachiko. Suddenly I was in Yoshi Shinosaki's clinic. The very same clinic Nakashima and I had visited on that fateful day. I was viewing Sachiko's memories of an event from long ago. Yoshi was writing something on her journal.
この本に書かれている術はすべて実体の伴わない理論でしかなかった。成功例に関する文献も全く存在しない。私はなんと愚かなことをしてしまったのだろう。最初から成功しないものに心血を注いでいたなんて。本の中身である涅槃が飛び出し、異空間を作ってしまうだけの失敗作の術。しかもそこに囚われた死者は生きていた証。存在の痕跡すらも消されてしまう。
Ja, das ist Sachikos Mutter. Sachiko came into the room from the back. Her eyes met with Yoshi's, and she smiled.
飛び出した涅槃を抑え込むことができたため。
Sachiko stood obediently by her mother, wearing the white dress we'd seen on her in Heavenly Host. Yoshi patted her on the head approvingly. Sachiko then caught out a fine black mist, but sucked it back into her mouth like a carp. Ach ja, damals war sie ja noch ein bisschen im Kopf. Die Kleine. The face on the image was blacked out, like those of Seiko and the others. However, to my surprise, the black marking was slowly peeling itself away, revealing the features underneath. Das Spiel Book of Shadows wäre sehr, sehr, sehr schwer zu LPen. Weil da hätte man fast nur Text, man würde nicht durch die Gegend rennen. Das würde ich wahrscheinlich so nicht hinkriegen. My vision slowly cleared, and when it did, amidst all the rumbling and shaking, I found myself back in Heavenly Host Elementary. Then promptly, Sachiko collapsed to the ground. Without thinking, I picked her up and held her limp, lightly body in my arm. She must have used up her spirit energy, as she was clearly drained. She was breathing, but only very lightly. Sachiko was real. She had to have been, or I wouldn't have been able to hold onto her like this. Gitter, Bro, habe ich doch schon erklärt, ist schon lange abgebrochen. Da wird auch nichts mehr zu kommen. She seemed injured, but not in any traditional manner. There were cracks running through her body, each one emanating an unearthly blue, almost gaseous light. Meanwhile, the school itself was also cracking and breaking all around me, making an incredible noise. The roof above began to crumble away, providing glimpses of the real world. And incredibly, the entity walls hadn't spawned there yet. I could hardly believe it. I just complimented Sachiko, of all people, on a job well done. Her newly formed physical body was rapidly beginning to evaporate into mist. My voice was trembling, though I suspect it was less with fear and more with confusion. She looked up into the sky, eyes beginning to well with tears. She was struggling to speak. Soon she wouldn't be able to at all. She barely had any voice left, but was persevering nonetheless. This was clearly something she didn't want to leave unsaid, no matter what. And with that, she began full-on crying. I couldn't help doing the same. The tears were streaming down my face now. Sachiko's voice was mournful, so genuine. A massive earthquake shook the ground. Sachiko looked scared, so I patted her head and hugged her tightly. She then looked me squarely in the eye, gripping her Colvara necklace tightly in her hand as if it were a rosary. Sachiko and the blue light alike both disappeared completely. She was gone. The being I was hugging just moments ago no longer existed. All I could do was clench my fists and mourn. The look on Sachiko's face when she asked if I was scared of dying kept flashing through my head. I kept my head hung low for a moment, then stood up and wiped the tears from my eyes. Accompanying the sound of rumbling, one single entity war now stood in the real world. The cycle was beginning anew. Chapter 7 Determination to be content. Wow, ey! Threading the needle. Boah, ey! Wir haben eigentlich noch voll viel Zeit, aber ich möchte jetzt ehrlich gesagt nicht weitermachen. Sachiko war schon tot, aber jetzt ist auch ihre Seele gestorben, kann man sagen. Der Rest von ihr. Ich möchte ernsthaft jetzt nicht weitermachen. Ich musste das jetzt erst was sacken lassen. Na, auf jeden Fall, das war euer Keanu mit Let's Play Corpse Party Blood Drive. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Ciao.